Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning. I'm Rabbi Jenny Greenspan for Congregation Beth-El, and I'm here for our weekly Torah Talk. This week we are discussing Parashat Re'eh in the book of Deuteronomy. I'll give us a few moments for friends to join us, and then we will get started. If you don't have a copy of the Etz Chaim Chumash at home, we do have the PDF available as usual on our website. Just go to beeasy613.org and click on our virtual Shabbat resources, and you'll see it listed as Torah Talk resources. If you have a copy of a Chumash that is not in Etz Chaim at home, we will be at the very beginning of Parashat Re'eh, so chapter 12 of Deuteronomy, and we'll be starting with verse 26. Sorry, chapter 11, verse 26 of Deuteronomy is Parashat Re'eh. If you are following along with an Etz Chaim Chumash, either in a physical book or from the PDFs, I am starting right at the beginning of Parashat Re'eh, which is on page 1061. So I'll give a couple moments for people to join and to track down a Chumash if they'd like to follow along. We will be starting at the beginning and we will be doing a jump, but I'll make sure to share which verses I am jumping to. And so far, good morning and welcome to Nikki Ashworth and to Alan Hamburger. So good to see you each week. Shabbat Shalom, good morning. And we'll get started in just a minute. As we have been doing when we have had Beth-El B'nai Mitzvah, who were initially scheduled for the spring but will be going for today. We do have that today, which you can join on live stream or on Zoom to see the Bat Mitzvah of Annie Burnett. She and her family learned the Parashat Shmini, which was the Parsha for her originally scheduled date. So we'll be discussing Re'eh here on Torah Talk and hearing a bit about Shmini from Annie and her family from the Bima in about an hour or so. But when we get to the Torah service, we'll start at 10 o'clock for the service, for the full service itself. And it's a somewhat poetic match because while I'm not going to dive into that today, nor do I think will Annie, both Torah portions, both Re'eh and Parashat Shmini, are the two places where the laws of kashrut, the laws of keeping kosher, are discussed. So there's at least a beautiful poetic link between the two parshiot and honoring both of those parshiot today. Since we didn't get to honor Parashat Shmini in its place from the Bima, we'll do that today with Annie and her family, and we'll do Parashat Re'eh for today together. So Shabbat Shalom and welcome also to the Seagulls and to Phyllis Luger. Good to see everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. As I said, I'm at the opening verse of Parashat Re'eh on page 1061 if you're following in the Etz Chaim Chumash. If you're using a different Chumash, I am in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 11, verse 26, where we have Re'eh, Anochi noten lifnechem hayom, bracha uklala. See, behold, look. It's the same kind of verb form as shma, but rather than hearing or listening, it is with our eyes. See it. I today, God today, put before you blessing and curse. The rest of the verses immediately following go on to say blessings if you follow God's laws, curses if you don't. And it seems very black and white on the first read. And it seems very much if you do the God's commandments, then great, blessings, good things always. And if you don't, bad things. And it's a single one-time choice. You do it or you don't. And I want to problematize that a little bit by looking at another section of this same Torah portion, a few pages on. We're going to look at chapter 15, starting at verse 7. And I will mention chapter 15, verse 4, which is on page 1077, if you're following in the Chumash, says, "There shall be no needy amongst you." That if we follow this blessing and curse model and everybody simply follows God's commandments, there won't be anybody in need. And yet, jump immediately to verse 7, not even 5 verses later. "If, however, there is a needy person amongst you." So I think that this one reminds us that the choices between bracha uklala, between blessing and curse, and caring for others and not, and following God's ways and not, are constant choices. They were not a one-time choice that if we chose it then we're good and everything is fine, but rather constant choices. And sometimes we can be making the choice to care for others and fail on that and end up with people in need. So we have this verse that we start on verse 4 with there won't be anyone in need, and then on verse 7, if there's someone in need. And what follows here, I think, is one of the most profound sections of our Torah, because we are told how. And with some help from our commentators, we're really told how to make sure that we care for the needy person and offer tzedakah, offer our help, offer righteousness and justice, and in some forms just very literally charity, as tzedakah is often translated into English. Though I think as you may know, tzedakah comes from the word tzedek, meaning justice, more so than charity, and handing someone money. That is one way to do tzedakah. And here we see in a few verses a few other ways. So let's read the verses together, verses 7 through 11. If, however, there is a needy person among you, one of your kinsmen in your settlements, in the land that Adonai your God is giving you, do not harden your heart and shut your hand against your needy kinsman. Rather, you must open your hand and lend him sufficient for whatever he needs. Beware lest you harbor the base thought, the 7th year, the year of remission, is approaching, so that you are mean to your needy kinsman and give him nothing. Remember, there's a concept in Torah of on the 7th year all loans are canceled. That's what that is referring to. He will cry out to Adonai against you, and you will incur guilt. Give to him readily, have no regrets when you do so, for in return Adonai your God will bless you in all your efforts and in all your undertakings. For there will never cease to be needy ones in your land, which is why I command you, when you hand to the poor and open your hand to the poor and the needy kinsmen in your land, that we must care for one another and hand people in need what they need. Rashi seems to lay out in his comment on verse 7. So Rashi, my favorite French medieval commentator, verse 7. So when there's a needy amongst you, one of your kinsmen, in any of the settlements in the land that Adonai your God is giving you, do not harden your heart and shut your hand against the needy kinsman. And he's going to use that verse to lay out what I like to call Rashi's plan of tzedakah in 3 acts. And he goes piece by piece. If there is a needy amongst you, that most needy person is the one who needs to be prioritized and given help first. And then amongst your family, amongst your brethren, amongst your kinsmen, Rashi says, after you've helped the person most in need, help the person closest to you. And then in your settlement, in your gates, in your city, help the people who live nearest you. So our priorities for how to give, to whom to give, start with the person most in need, and then we ripple out. And so hopefully with those ripples from our space rippling out and someone else's space rippling out from there and rippling out from there, we can cover everyone. And in that choosing to give and that choosing bracha, we can spread bracha, we can spread blessing to everyone. And Rashi says when the Torah says, lo ta'amatz, don't harden your heart, do not deliberate, do not decide, I think I should give this person, do I need to give this person, should I make this donation? If you have even the slightest inkling to give, just give, is what Rashi says. Do not harden your heart means there. And to not close your hand means you do not want to be inconsistent and unpredictable, he says. You don't want to leave people wondering whether or not you will give again. That you do your best to give as often as you can and to be a generous person, because he concludes with, you never know when you yourself may end up being the one in need. And if we start with those ripples and care for our own communities and work our way out, then everyone will end up cared for. And the Talmud and the Mishnah and all of our later commentaries also dive into this verse, looking at all different ways to make sure that we are constantly giving. In Talmud, in Masechet Ketubot, it says that if you have somebody that you think needs the help and doesn't want to accept a gift, you give it to him as a loan and you don't expect the loan back. It's looking at ways to give with dignity and give with honor. In the Mishnah in Masechet Pe'ah, which discusses the corners of fields that are to be left for the poor, it also tries to lay out minimums. It says there's no upper limit, but let's set out minimums for how much we can give and make sure that we are always giving. because that is how we can constantly be offering the choice for bracha. If we can give and we can share with one another, we can always be offering help and giving bracha. And so here we are getting God's guidance in how to make verse 4, that ideal of there being no one amongst us who is poor, happen. And it starts with us rippling out and helping, and it starts with us constantly choosing the best way forward, and the best way to see everybody. So maybe that opening verse of this Torah portion, choose blessing or choose curse, I don't think is a one-time thing that we choose blessing and we follow God's ways and everything will be good, or once we say and immediately everything will be bad. I don't think it's that simple. I think that we are guided to constantly thinking about our practice for ourselves, how it affects us, how it affects others, how we can give and how we can grow. And I don't think that verse is meant to be read in black and white. I listened to a song earlier today, which I highly recommend looking up, a new song by Thomas Rhett, who is a country artist, which is a collaboration, and they did a song called "In a World Full of Hate, Be a Light," which he did as a collaboration with other country artists. And whether or not you're a country fan, I recommend this particular song. There's a lot of joy to it because it is driving home the message of that title, "In a World Full of Hate, Be a Light." And it concludes with, it's hard to live in color when you just see black and white. In a world full of hate, be a light. And I think our Torah portion is giving us the same invitation that this song is giving us. If we want to live in color and truly see our blessings, we have to remember that the world is not black and white. It's not one-time decisions. It's not this person is poor today and I will never be. It's a constant looking and seeing everything as it is, as our opening verse said, or opening word, and the name of this Torah portion is Re'eh. See what's right in front of you. See who is right in front of you, and see what you can do and how you can use your Judaism, your Jewish practice, and the guidance in our Judaism to see the world in color, and in a world full of hate, be a light and share. So Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for joining me. Shabbat Shalom to Cheryl Toof and to my mom and Marty Lipp and Carol Steinfeld, and to Amy Ningen. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I'm glad you're finally in Indiana. Welcome and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope any who are interested, please join us by going to either bez613.org and choosing the live stream option at 10 o'clock, or if you have the congregational email and would like to join on the Zoom, you may do so, and we will celebrate the bat mitzvah of Annie Burnett, and we will hear a little bit from her about Parashat Shemini. Again, I love the poetic link that both of these Torah portions do discuss the laws of kashrut. If you're interested in reading through them, they're in the PDF that I offered for this Torah portion on our Shabbat resources. Shabbat Shalom, and I will see you all soon.